Well, Curtis, a brand learned a very expensive lesson this week.
They did.
Yeah, that's probably they're probably glad to see the week go and the news cycle refresh. But of course, we're talking about Cracker Barrel and the now infamous rebrand. So we wanted to tackle that today and just provide our perspective on what we think, what went wrong, maybe anything that went right. And I think there's a key lesson to be learned here, don't you?
Yes, it was an expensive lesson. 600 million to do the rebranding.
How is that even possible? But we'll come
I
back to that.
Yeah, I think it was 100 million lost in stock value, but the stock has rebounded, so I don't know if that number is still relevant.
Yeah.
Um, it's at a pretty strong number, at least as of today in this recording. But
Yeah.
they had a pretty big dip, and then well, they corrected, and so there's a rebound.
Yeah.
What's the saying? Like, all press is good press, or you
There's no
know,
such thing as bad news or bad
yeah,
PR, something like that?
yeah, no
Bad
such thing as
press.
bad PR. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know about that. To me, I think what they did is they committed a fundamental error that whether it's a rebrand or anything else, it's rooted in trying to answer the question, what do we want to be, as opposed to what does our audience want us to be? To me, what this looks like is somebody decided we need to modernize, we need to keep up with the times, and we need to reinvent ourselves. Did they ever ask the customer if any of that was important to them?
Well, that's what I'm curious about, and that's what we've talked a lot about on this podcast, haven't we, Tom? What you've been teaching me over the years, what our guests have come on and talked about. Uh, yeah, we've had marketing to mindsets and understanding your customer and their mindset. What motivates them? I think of like when I was a kid and the mindset of my parents. Yeah, I don't know if you did this. Your parents took you on vacations and road trips. We didn't fly a lot, but we would drive a lot. We wouldn't go far, but if you were on a road trip with the family, or we were staying at a hotel for a family wedding or something, you got up in the morning and you were driving down the highway. That iconic Cracker Barrel sign would be off the highway. You'd see it from the highway right
Yeah.
at an exit, perfectly placed location. And, you'd see it from a couple miles away and you would pull off and you're having breakfast at the Cracker Barrel. And it was an experience. It wasn't just breakfast.
No.
You waited half hour for your table. I think that was a forced wait too. So you would stay in the country store and you would
Yep.
buy antiques, or as a
Mhm.
kid, I'd look for some toys to buy.
Yep.
I mean, so mindset and just emotional connection to a brand, memories and those types of things. It just, I don't know. So did you have similar memory? Do you have any memories of Cracker Barrel?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, um, we never went, we went to the Cracker Barrel infrequently. I don't know if my parents didn't like it or whatever, but everything you described was exactly my first experience. But when you say you notice the sign from the roadside, you're noticing, even if you're not like looking at it in detail, you're noticing old Uncle Herschel or whatever his name is, right? Sitting next to
Yep.
this barrel. And you're like, the mind, it does certain things, right? It brings you back in time. It's supposed to look antique. It totally fits the experience. And you're like, yeah, even if I don't go there, I kind of, you get the feel as you're driving by. And then
And,
with
and
this
you
new,
immediately think rocking chairs, you think biscuits and gravy, and fried eggs on your plate with a side of pancakes, and there's a nostalgia that goes with that
absolutely.
vision. And if Stephanie and I are on a trip and we're driving down the highway, I see a cracker, I literally say Cracker Barrel. Like when I see the sign, like I
Yeah.
just call out while I'm driving Cracker Barrel.
Yep.
It's just, and it's a nostalgia thing.
It is.
It's a memory.
It's so ostensibly what they attempted to do, because now this new logo takes Uncle Earl, takes the barrel off, and it's just completely stark. Somebody probably looked at it and said, now that's hip. That's modern. To me, I look at it and it's like completely bleak. And and devoid of nostalgia, devoid of character. You can't say it has anything other than a strange looking font in the same old colors. But have you ever seen the memes? Graphic design is my passion. And they would it would be some horrible. This is what look like a graphic design is my passion meme. And it's just like, what are you doing? Even before I heard the crowd reaction, I was like, "What is this?" Your thoughts?
Well, I think of other rebrands. I mean, they're typically more subtle,
Mm.
right? Big brands like this. I mean, it's one thing for a small company who maybe there's not so much risk in doing something drastic, but I feel like this was drastic, and
We just mentioned
uh,
all the brand equity that they had, so these big
right.
companies have brand equity, so go ahead.
You threw it out
Yep.
essentially with the again, if you modernizing something that's meant to be, old country
Store.
antique.
Old country store is in the
And
name.
it's like they don't even this is what I'm struggling with, Tom, and I want the lesson to be heard here to our audience is like, do you really know your customer? It's like, it'd be one thing to say, "Hey, we're going after a new target demographic," and I don't know where this $600 million went.
We
And
would have done it for 500,000,000.
right. And, if that market research went into the people who regularly go into these stores,
Couldn't have.
based on the response, the public response, they obviously didn't want this. They don't want it modernized. They didn't want to get rid of the rocking chairs. They didn't want to get rid of Uncle Earl or whatever his name is. Um, they wanted to keep it the way it is. And, you've seen like Starbucks do a rebrand. It's still it's like a mermaid, isn't it? Isn't a mermaid in the
Yep.
Starbucks logo
Yeah,
kind of thing?
I can picture it, but again,
Yeah.
that's the point, right?
But they slightly modified the stylistic style of the mermaid. It wasn't they didn't, like, get rid of the icon that
Mhm.
is, you know, part of the brand, and, so anyway, I don't get it. I don't
Well,
know.
and so going back to did they ask the customer? I have my doubts. Again, to me, it's too often it's a matter of what do we want to be as opposed to what should we be based on audience data. Um, they clearly didn't then once they went through the rebrand, they had an opportunity to ask the public again, "What do you think before we launch this?" And they would have got like a bad ending to a bad movie. They would have gotten the reviews to say, "Nope, you need to make sure that the couple gets together at the end because that's what the person wants to feel when they go outside the theater at the end of the movie." They couldn't have done that. If they did and they still went forward anyway, it's like, what are you even thinking?
Right,
And
because you would have done focus groups, right? You would have
yep,
tested the brand in some way. I mean, for smaller brands, talk about have you've been involved in sort of the quantitative, qualitative research of
yep.
branding and which one, the quant or the qual is focus groups and kind
Qual.
of getting that data.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
qual. Those qual insights are so key, but there's a step before this, which is let's find out is this even the right strategic move? Not like should we create a new logo, right? Like, is this even the
Mhm.
right strategic move to satisfy an audience, whether it's the new audience that they're not going to get probably, or the old audience that they're going to totally abandon? It's like you could do that research before you even put pen to paper or even got a quote on a rebrand because I'm sure the data would have come back and said, no, we like it. I remember driving down the street or on the highway as a young boy, everything that you just said. So, um, again, I think it comes from this desire to you have a vision of what you wish your brand could be. And that's not always in alignment with what the people who buy your product or service want it to be or expect it to be. And it can be jarring. And you mentioned big brands that do it subtly. There's more to a rebrand or a repositioning or just an update refresh to a quote unquote brand than changing the logo. And I think of specifically like Wendy's, about 10 years ago when Twitter was super hot. And they got this hot shot brash personality running their Twitter account. And clearly to appeal to millennials were hot on Twitter at the time, right? And this person initially it was a person, then it became a team, took Wendy's viral with almost every tweet, and they invented the whole "Sir, this is a Wendy's" meme.
Yeah.
And it captivated the audience of a new generation of people who weren't brought up on Wendy's like maybe Gen X was. They didn't have to change their logo. I think they probably did tweak it here and there, but that wasn't the point. It's not like let's reinvent ourselves because we're going to somehow appeal to this whole new mass audience without abandoning our tried and true. There's different things you could do. And that's where I think research comes in. It will reveal kind of what some of those things should be as opposed to what you want it to be.
Yeah, I'm ready to talk about those. I mean, because we do some of that for these smaller brands who have maybe put together their positioning um, themselves without
Yep.
asking the customers first, right? And
Mhm.
they get some success, they get some traction, they get some customers, and they're doing good work, or they're selling good product, or they're getting people into their restaurant. Um, but if you want to evolve that, you shouldn't guess.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
is where I'm at, and there's a whole lot of guessing happening right now in the marketing world of like, "Hey, I've got a creative idea. Let's try this."
Yeah.
It's like, but do you know if that's going to resonate first?
Exactly. And you wrote down, so I'm going to give you credit to this. Emotional branding isn't data that you can ignore. And going back to the marketing to mind states, there is so much emotion wrapped up in an infinity or lack thereof to a brand that companies can ignore because they're so focused on lead gen, sales, revenue, clicks, vanity metrics. And I think what we're finding, and you and I both are kind of the same mind, that like we are now entering a world where emotion and branding are going to be more important. It's not that they're still important; they might be more important than the data and the clicks and the things that we've been accustomed to measuring the last 2 years.
Yeah, what I've seen, and Will talked about this in the marketing to mindset. So what did he say? There's 35,000 advertisements that we see every single day,
Yeah.
and that's probably increasing. It's probably more than when he did the research to figure out that number. And so we just have all these inputs, and to be able to cut through that noise of inputs, the scrollers through the feeds or whatever. Um, if you're not connecting with your audience at some level, some form of resonance,
Hmm.
you're never even going to have that opportunity to sell. And maybe Cracker Barrel thought they weren't connecting with their audience. Maybe they thought there was some staleness to it, and they wanted to up. That's why I kind of said like, well, you know, maybe it was, even though it was bad press. Maybe at the end of the day, it was it a PR stunt?
Yeah. What if we found out, plot twist, that this was all intentional?
Right. I mean, headline news, the president's talking about it. It's been on,
Right.
every news station. And now all of a sudden, Cracker Barrel's a thing again. Right.
Yeah, you've
And
planted that seed. Now I can't unthink that because the logo was so bad. It's like they
right.
had to have been doing this on purpose.
Well, and it wasn't just the logo, but just the redesign of the restaurants and everything. That was just like, unless your food is exceptional, you basically just took away the whole reason why people stop there. Right. And when you take away that nostalgia, it's like, well, I can get eggs and pancakes just about anywhere. And personally for me, I'm probably going to choose a healthier place
Right.
than, grits and
Yeah.
biscuits and gravy. So
You decide to forfeit the health because of the experience, right?
exactly.
Exactly. It's like, I'll do this just because it's gonna be fun and it's gonna make me feel warm. I'm just
Because you're
thinking.
appealing to emotions, right?
Exactly.
I'm on a drive. We're on vacation, and I want to have a little bit of my childhood back. And maybe share that experience with my kids.
Yeah,
Say, "Hey, kids, let's stop at Cracker Barrel." Like, you'll
exactly.
get to see what it was like, 30 years ago when I was a little toddler.
And that's how you're gonna get the next generation, not by,
Right.
like, modernizing the brand. I just my sort of pull through lesson for companies that we might represent, because Cracker Barrel has not yet called us, nor has Wendy's. But, I think it's important to distinguish, like, what to focus on as you grow as a company. When you're a startup, the only thing that should matter is sales. Get out there and sell. It doesn't even matter what your logo is. As you evolve, you run out of the Rolodex, Aunt Millie's and your Uncle John and your best friend Harry. You run out of those people who are willing to hire you just because they know you. And now you go from a sales mentality to a market mentality. So now you're marketing to masses, a lot of whom don't know you yet and don't have any skin in the game to help you succeed. So that's when your efforts change. When you get to be of a certain size so that you're so important and you're playing in such a big market, that's when brand starts to matter, because the brand is a reflection of who you are to a market who has not yet fully understood who they are, right? So the people who haven't gone into Cracker Barrel haven't had that nostalgia. They don't have the warm fuzzy. They still need to have a brand that conveys that that's what it is, because that's the authentic experience that they're getting. And then as soon as you take that away, disconnect. So, anyways,
The
I think
why. You just got rid of the why.
just got rid of the why. Exactly. Exactly. And the funny thing is, which we don't have a ton of time to go into, but the interview that you sent me with the founder, who is no longer in the leadership team. Well, how would you summarize his take on this?
Uh, well, he just can't believe it. I mean, I think he's quoted as saying, uh, the CEO, the existing CEO's formerly from Taco Bell, and it's like she may know food, but she doesn't know old country, right? And they're the old country store, right? So there's just this whole disconnect between what what they are, you know what I
Well,
mean, what they stand for,
exactly.
and
And Taco
who
Bell already has a track record of being hip and young and evolving with each new generation, right? Taco Bell's brand no longer appeals to me as a 55-year-old. The food still does if I'm going to binge, which I don't really do much anymore, but the appeal doesn't, right? This is the brand essence. So she was trying to bring what she knew from Taco Bell over to Cracker Barrel. And I think that's the mistake because that was misaligned. They have two different whys, two
right.
different whys. Back to your point.
Yeah, so he says the best thing the brand can do is keep it country.
Well
Right. So we
said.
say modernize. You could modernize country and modern country, Lainey Wilson and, all these other country singers that are just like, massively hitting the charts. I mean, they're bringing cowboy and cowgirl hats back and boots and those types of things. So lean into that, but you don't lose the history and where you came from. Right. So you're not appealing to the upstate New Yorker.
Yep, exactly.
You know,
Eh, Again, I think, just to wrap it up, it all comes back to know thy audience. If you don't know thy audience, and you probably don't, research them. Even if you think you know them, research them just to validate it. And then you ultimately have another attempt before you roll something out to ask the audience again, did we get this right? And if the answer is no, you've caught the problem before you spent 700, how many million or billion?
Yeah, 600 million in the
Million.
rebrand and 100 million lost in stock, I guess the way it goes. So yeah, that sounds like it may be rebounded, but if it cost them 600 million to rebrand, I I don't know. I mean, you could have tested this in a social post. It's like an April Fool's thing.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And then see the reaction and be like, "Yeah, we were just kidding."
Well, that's what IHOP did when they changed to International House of Burgers. Remember that? That was like it
No.
was all a joke. It didn't feel like it though, and the whole world revolted. And they're like, "This is not what you are." Well, that should have been a lesson to Cracker Barrel. To like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so again, let's reiterate. Uh, know thy customer. If you don't know how to survey, interview, hire somebody,
yep.
right? That's what that and we can do some of that if you need help. Let's
Trust in
get
the
the customer.
findings. Trust
Yep,
in the findings. The data does not lie. You might not like what I tell you. I hear, but you're arguing with the data. You're not arguing with me.
yep, yep. And then take that messaging and test it. Put it out in the world and test it and see how it resonates.
Yep. But
Whew.
always in the service of the customer's why, not your why, which goes back to the beginning. Their why was we want to modernize. The customer's why was I want to feel like I'm in an old country store. That's it.
And with that,
We'll let you
we'll
get
see you
back to
next
your business.